Hey everybody, welcome to Made Possible by Pop Culture, the podcast. I'm your host and producer, Danielle Turchiano. Today we have a very special guest, Megan Vick. She's an entertainment journalist with a specialty in television. She's also a K-pop expert. And, you may know her from Zap to It, The Messenger, RIP, TVGuide.com. Fun fact, she and I actually were at sister sites, TVGuide.com and Metacritic.com, where I was for a hot second. We're owned by the same corporate entity. Two same corporate entities in my short tenure there. So we got to collaborate on a few fun projects. So I'm very excited to have her on today's episode. So everybody give Megan a nice warm welcome.
What up?
I was like, maybe we'll have some applause. I'm not sure yet.
Yeah.
How are you, Megan? How are things in your neck of the woods?
I am one of the hundreds, if not thousands, of journalists that are experiencing that whole layoff situation and trying to figure out what the next chapter is, as you know well.
Yeah.
You've been here. So right now, the Messenger imploded about a month ago as we are recording this. So it's been a month of just trying to freelance and figure out, stay afloat while I figure out what I want to do next.
Yeah. But the one thing I will say is that because you've covered so many different shows and you've worked at different sites, I feel like freelancing, as unstable as it sounds, I don't think it's a bad way to go for a lot of people. I think you can have more freedom sometimes doing that.
Yeah. And I am very fortunate. I know a lot of people are struggling right now, but I have been fortunate that a lot of people have reached out and been like, we heard and we'd like you to work with us. So I am so thankful to them, because in those immediate days after the layoff, and you're like, wait, my rent is due. Yeah. What am I going to do? They have helped appease a lot of that stress. So I'm enjoying that I get to go grocery shopping in the middle of the day and
be a person.
Yeah, be a person. I'm less stoked about how to file taxes and everything, but that's one step at a time.
Right. And the other thing is, I feel there's probably a world where some of the things that you want to write about, you want to talk about, you weren't able to do at the last job you had, maybe the last two jobs you have. How do you feel so far you've been able to kind of marry those things, the things you really want to work on, the things that you love, versus what management is telling you to write about?
Yeah, I think, it's been good that I've gotten to go to people and be like, I really care about this show a lot and I want to write, and people have cared about that. When you're passionate about it, they want you to write about it. When you're at a specific outlet, it is you have to write about things that do well for that outlet. You have to write about things in the style, the voice and the particular cadence of that outlet. So it has been nice to sort of shop around, expand my skills. One thing that I've been struggling with is I've been writing a lot of features that are not, I'm usually a Q&A interview girly, and now it's just a lot of people are asking, no, I want your opinion on TV. And I was like, oh, can I can, but it has been that's a different kind of muscle of being oh yeah, no, I can talk about this for 1,200 words. I can do that.
It's true. It is, I think it's a very different muscle, partially because I feel I'm old school I feel like we should separate critique from feature. Sometimes I don't like to hear too much of someone's opinion in certain types of pieces of journalism. But then there are other occasions where I'm all I want is your opinion, which is honestly why I started this podcast. Because I'm I want to talk to people who love what they do because they loved it from when they were young. And it's a passion that they have, because I feel a lot of people say, oh, or at least they said to me, oh, you write about television for a living. I don't understand how that's a job. So how did that start for you? Do you remember when you were younger, the thing that made you say, I want this to be my job?
It's not necessarily that I knew that I wanted writing about TV journalism, writing about TV to be my job necessarily. That kind of came because I didn't realize it was a job. It wasn't, but the thing I remember of the first TV show that became loving that TV show as my personality was Dawson's Creek. so like that's the thing that I picked, was like, oh yeah, like I had loved TV shows before. You and I have bonded over our love of Saved by the Bell, but like
Yes.
Dawson's Creek was the first one where like I became an absolute fiend. And like Wednesdays at 8, don't talk to me. And it was also like I was kind of alone in it because my brother is 5.5 years older than me.
Mhm.
And so I grew up in a situation where my parents just found it too difficult to tell him that he couldn't watch shows and then keep me out of the room when he wanted to watch something. So I got to watch a lot of things that my
Mhm.
friends were not allowed to watch. So Dawson's Creek premiered when I was 8.
Okay. I was going to ask because I do
Yeah.
feel like that is also the defining thing is like, how old were you? Because that sometimes means the imprint is a certain imprint, not just how big it is, but like what about Dawson's Creek imprinted on you probably has a lot to do with where you were in your life.
Yeah. So it premiered when I was 8, and that first season that premiered in January and ran to the spring,
Yeah.
came on Tuesdays at 9 after Buffy. I remember
Yes.
the WB lineup. And I wasn't allowed to watch that first season because my bedtime was 9 o'clock.
Oh no. I love that
But
also for anybody listening that doesn't understand this, this is, I feel like we shouldn't have to say, but we do have to say this was long before you could just like pull it up streaming anytime you
yeah,
want. Like if you didn't get to watch it because your bedtime was at a certain time, you didn't get to watch it. You just missed it. It wasn't anywhere for
yeah.
you to get.
And it was awful. So we would like finish watching Buffy's, then like trailer for like up next on, and I was like, oh, I want to watch these teens so bad, and I couldn't. And then so I had to wait until the summer, and I watched season 1 during like the summer reruns when I didn't have a 9 o'clock bedtime.
That's
And then
good.
that second season, they moved it Wednesdays to 8, and so I was able to watch it. But yeah, that's the first show that I remember being like it becoming my personality. And then like over time, I realized, oh, like I watch a lot of television.
Well, so you said season 2 was when you got into it like real time. Tell like
Yeah.
what was the thing that made it your personality? What was the piece of it that you feel like made you feel like this is who I am or who I want to be?
Yeah. So a huge part of it is I grew up in North Carolina, and it was filmed in North Carolina. They called it Massachusetts, but like we all knew it was Wilmington. So like they felt like attainable teens to me, despite I was also a very precocious, overachieving
Okay.
8/9-year-old. So like the advanced vocabulary was actually like it was like these teens are me. And I just knew from the get-go I wanted to be Joey Potter. Like
Okay.
she was the girl next door. She was everything I wanted to be. Um and they were North Carolina teens, and when I was just on that precipice of like middle school slash, so like they were like the ultimate like this is what I want to be. And also like they had boyfriends, and they were doing like it was so like scandalous that they were talking about sex. And it was
Well, it's scandalous because you were 8 or 9.
yeah.
That's what I find so interesting is like I feel like a lot of these teen shows you are not necessarily a teenager when you're watching them, especially the ones from, the 90s or the early 2000s. It felt like they skewed a little bit different for all the
Yeah.
reasons that you're saying. Like you wanted to attain that lifestyle, you didn't have it yet.
Yeah.
So Joey,
Yeah.
girl next door, yes, kind of a tragic backstory, which you don't have a tragic backstory, thankfully.
I
So
do not.
which is good. I'm not, but was there something that you saw in her that you felt like, oh yes, we're the same, or was it more of like, oh, I want that, I want Pacey pining for me, I want to choose between these, like what was it?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, yes, every girl like Pacey is the ultimate TV boyfriend, but I
Well, I
think
think,
part of it,
go ahead.
yeah,
I was like, I
part
think
of
we
it was
might start some fights with that, but that's okay.
part of it was also that like part of Joey's quote unquote tragic backstory was that her sister was in a relationship with a black guy, and like that
Yeah.
whole thing. And at the time, I'm biracial. My mom's white, my dad's black. Um, and until I was 8, I grew up on military
Mm,
bases, and then my dad retired. But when you're on a military base, every kid is some kind of mixture of
mm,
something. And then we moved to Fayetteville, North Carolina, and I was like an alien on this
mm.
planet that I had like been all these places. So like the fact that Joey had this like thing, like she was experiencing this like weird racism sort of thing, was also kind of parallel to what was
Yeah.
going on. And I think I like latched on to like her tragic backstory made me like I didn't have a tragic backstory, but I was like, but like we're the same because
Right. No, I get it. Because I mean, if you don't
yeah,
see a lot of that representation, then like where you do see it, you're more inclined, I think, to say like, oh, I identify with that, or I can learn from that, or whatever it is. When I
yeah,
and I do want to clarify, when I said tragic backstory, I meant like her mom dying and her dad. Like I
yeah.
didn't mean,
Oh
I'm not
yes,
calling an interracial relationship tragic. I don't think that's tragic, but
no, but
I
like
do
in the
think that the way that
show,
people respond to it sometimes is not great. So
and it was definitely framed in the show that she was like a pariah of the community
yeah,
because her sister had a baby out of wedlock with a black dude. Like that was part of the thing. I will say like Joey was also like she came from a small town and her whole thing was she wanted to go to an Ivy League school and she wanted and that was when I got to Fayetteville after again, I had a very fortunate like early childhood where like army bases, we were
yeah,
stationed in Germany. We went to vacation in Greece and all these fancy places. Then we get to Fayetteville and it's like a culture shock.
yeah.
And as soon as I got there, I was like, I have to get out of here. So like I also identified to that drive of like, I'm a small town person, but I'm gonna go. I so thought I was gonna go to Harvard. Like that was my
Because you wanted to go to Harvard, or because you saw it on TV?
I think like both. Like it was
Okay,
kind of like
okay. That's
TV
fair.
shaped that thing. Also, my dad like went to Brown and he was the first person in his family to graduate from
Oh, nice.
college. And he was like, we can get shirts that say second generation Ivy League.
Oh,
So there was a pressure to succeed. But no, like I really related to Joey's like striving to like, I'm gonna get the scholarship and all
yeah,
these things that she felt. And I felt that similar like drive throughout the entire
yeah.
series of like, I have to figure out how to get out of this small town that doesn't understand me and my like family.
But it worked because you did, because you got
Because I
out.
did.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think like we underestimate, or not we, but like a lot of people I think underestimate that. Like when I was growing up, so much of what I would hear from my family was like, don't watch too much TV. Like the old, it'll rot your brain ridiculousness, right? But at the same time, it's like, well, but sometimes you need those examples when you're not, like if you're stuck in your small town, or if you're stuck in your closed-minded family, or whatever it is, like you need these other examples to be able to say like, no, I'm gonna be, I hate to say I'm gonna be better, but like I'm gonna be better, I'm gonna be different.
Yeah.
And I
This
will
is
say,
also like
yeah.
it's in a time that was pre like the internet was around. We had
Mm-hmm.
AOL, but
Yeah.
like at the time that Dawson's Creek premiered, we didn't even have AOL. We had Prodigy internet and it we had to pay by the minute that you were
Oh,
online.
because I was like, I had AOL, but I also think you paid by the minute because it was like dial-up internet. And so like
Yeah.
I think your phone, you like you were paying for however long you were on the phone, which
Yeah.
I didn't, my
And then
parents never said anything about the bill. And that is the one thing I'm very thankful for about my weird childhood, is that I was online all day and it was okay.
yeah, definitely at the time that it premiered, we like I think AOL was too expensive, so we had Prodigy.
That's fair. Yeah, I don't know.
um, and it was a thing where like it charged you by the minute. So like we had my brother and I we had like sanctioned time, and also I was 8, so like I wasn't
Well,
allowed
I was
unsupervised
gonna
internet
say
time in the
that's a
first place.
good point.
Um, yeah, so when we did get like AOL, it was a few years before we got AOL, so like the whole like you can find your tribe on the internet,
Yeah.
not at 8 and not at that particular time. The only people on the
Yeah.
internet were child predators. Like
I was on the internet and I was like 12. So it
yeah,
was
but like
fun.
how do we find each other in the
I
sea of
don't know.
like
Well, listen, I'm going to say something that's going to be controversial. I wasn't watching Dawson's Creek when it was on originally. So I don't think we would have ever found each other on AOL or Prodigy or whatever. I was one of those people who like it was so close to my age that I was like, no, it's too close. I don't want to watch anything that's like too reminiscent of what I'm experiencing. Maybe I was 13. I don't actually know. What year we're talking? Oh, we're talking about years. I can do math. I know how old I am. It's fine.
Dawson's Creek premiered in January 1998.
Yeah, no, I know. I was trying to do the math on my own age, to be honest. That's what I was messing up. And I was 14 in 1998. So like honestly, it was my own math that was messing up, not the year. It doesn't matter. But you mentioned earlier or a minute ago, Pacey is the perfect TV boyfriend. And I want you to expand on that because like I said, it might start some fights on the internet. We don't know. I mean, I do think there are a lot of people that agree with you, but I am curious what made you say that then and what makes you still say it now, because there's also the does it hold up conversation, does their relationship hold up? So I want to dive into that
Yeah.
aspect of this.
Okay. I mean, like, okay, so season 2 was the first season that I was able to watch in real
Yeah.
time. So like that was the season that he was with Andy, and like that was like I can fix him season.
Mhm.
Like where Joe, like Pacey started, he wasn't just like a hornball jokester. He really like started to mature in that season. And even though Andy started, I was like, I can fix him. He was there for her in a lot of ways. Even though a lot of that story like kind of went over my head because what does a 9-year-old know about like
Right.
mental breakdowns?
That's yeah, and that's okay.
But no, I thought that they had like a very sweet storyline. In comparison, Dawson was already annoying me. By season 2, he and Joey were together, but he was always condescending and ugh. Um, so Pacey, I watched Pacey and Andy, and I love that storyline so much. Um, and then season 3 came around, and I remember watching the season 3 premiere, which ends with Jocelyn throws this big party at his house because Eve, the mysterious stranger, crashes the yacht, etc. And Joey offers him her virginity, and he rejects her, which is crazy because in the season 2 premiere, he made a season 2 finale. He made her turn her dad in for drugs, and then like the next episode, she's like,
Oh,
"I think we should
I
have
thought you were
sex."
going to say something. It was crazy for other reasons, but that,
Oh,
yes. I mean,
but yes,
I
all that.
remember a lot of the conversation, at least because, like I said, I was closer to the age. A lot of the conversation was like, that would never happen. He would never reject her.
Yeah,
And I think that
totally.
that is also valid points, but I'm kind of glad that happened because I also was on the, when I did watch it, did not like Dawson train. So it really bummed me out that like this was his show.
Yeah. My brother and I used to joke that it's Dawson's Creek, Pacey's River, but Joey's Ocean.
Mm, I like it.
Because
I
by
don't
the end of the show,
know.
it was about her.
I mean, yeah, but so much of it I always felt was, and maybe you disagree because you have watched this way more than I have, but like I always felt like a lot of the conversations that were had between Joey and Dawson or Joey and Pacey were still kind of from their point of view in the way that they spoke to her and the way the scene was written. Like she would have some agency, but there were so many moments where they're just yelling at her. And I'm like, she's just standing there and like taking it. And I don't know that that's realistic. And maybe part of that is because I've watched these episodes more, like I said, as I've been older than
Yeah.
when it was on, and I'm watching it with like I never would let that stand. And I can't really say what I would have done at 16, although I will say that like no guy ever yelled at me like that at 16 because they knew they couldn't get away with that with me. So maybe it is a little bit of a double-edged, like I just don't see it as realistic, not necessarily a gaze issue, but because I don't identify like her. I don't know. But I'm curious if you had that like experience watching the show then, watching the show now, the scenes, especially the scenes between Pacey and Joey in season 3, like as their relationship is forming, the way that he talks to her, the way that she talks to him. Did you feel like it was equal, or did you feel like there was still an element of like she can fix him?
No, I felt like it, like the thing with Pacey and Joey, especially in comparison to Dawson and Joey, was it felt like Pacey did give her more space,
Yeah,
right?
I think more space for sure.
Like and did allow, like, urged her to come to her own conclusions. And then, like, yes, there was some yelling and conflict when she refused to come to any conclusion. Like, that was her problem
That's true.
in season 3, was that, like, he's like, I've told you how I felt. I just need you to tell me one way or the other. And it's whenever you say something, the only thing you give me is like, I can't because Dawson. And he's like, that's not an answer about how you feel. That's an answer about how Dawson, and like, so that was the sort of thing. But I always felt like Dawson did always, I felt like Dawson was more overbearing in that way. Like,
Yeah.
that was the thing, was that like in season 1 he asked her to give up Paris. She was absolutely ridiculous. It was a 2-week trip to Paris. Like, are you kidding?
Yeah.
But
But
then in
it's
season,
Dawson's Creek. It's Dawson's show. So he expects everything to revolve
right?
around Dawson.
Exactly. And then in season 3, he starts to have these feelings for her, really only as it becomes obvious that Pacey has feelings for her. And then when he does find out about Pacey's feelings, then he goes into overdrive.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like that string of episodes from the longest day when Dawson's finds out to like the anti-prom, when he throws an entire prom to get Joey to date him, the regatta episode in which he like almost cheats at this boat race, which like Pacey had been rebuilding this boat all season. It was his whole journey, and then like Dawson just decides to get a boat to beat Pacey.
Sure, why not? As you do.
Like, and it's just like, what does this have to do with dating Joey? And like Pacey has a scene with Joey where he's like, this, no matter what I do, he's going to win, because like,
yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I never took that as like it has everything to do with Joey. It's just Dawson's personality of like he expects to be the protagonist all the time. Like he expects to always get what he wants, and you can make a lot of arguments for why that is. I mean, it's obviously a lot of privilege and entitlement, but I will say, you brought up the anti-prom, and I will say that as much as I was like, I don't know, I think they both kind of yell a lot. One of the moments that always stuck out to me about the show, I'm sure it did for you as well, is when Joey and Pacey are dancing at the anti-prom, and he talks about
remember everything.
Yes. And I was like, 16-year-old me probably would have found that really romantic. Me now, I'm like, I think it's a little creepy because he was like holding on to it. But that like says more about me than it does about him. So I mean, I don't know. Would you feel like that's one of your favorite moments, or like one of the more pivotal moments that you like rewatch all the time? Where are you in the...
Okay. 1,000%. I can recite the whole exchange.
I'm not going to make you do that.
No, I can do that, and I can do Joey's virginity speech. I like test myself in the shower once a week to make sure that I can still do Joey's virginity speech.
That's actually really impressive. I feel like
why is that important to me? But like, if I can't remember, then I have to go back and rewatch the scene until
you never know when it might be important. Like, you might have to do a DAWSON'S CREEK trivia sometime.
There's at Upright Citizens Brigade, they used to have a show called So Obsessed. Mm-hmm. And you would go, and like the prompts would be like, what are you so obsessed with? And I recited that speech for a sold out crowd.
I was like, yeah, you've already done it. You don't need to do it again necessarily.
But you never know.
I was just going to say, if somebody from that audience ever ran into you and remember that, they would probably test you on the spot just to see if you could still do it, or if you like studied special for that show.
And
you might want to keep up.
I keep it. Listen, this is about how you carried my bag off the bus yesterday. I can do it. I won't do it. I won't submit everyone.
I mean, if you want to do it, you can do it. I'm not going to stop you.
If anybody, it's so weird to do it. You know what I mean?
I wish I had known this ahead of time, because I maybe would have like set a moment where we like set the scene, and like we came in and did a reading, and maybe we should bring in a special guest to read.
Okay, well, now we're setting it up. I will do. Okay, here we go.
Yes.
Are ready? Okay. So the setup for the scene is that earlier in the episode, they had done a contest to see which of the guys had condoms in their wallet. And Pacey had pretended he had forgotten his wallet, and Joey found out he had and it led to a fight that like he had a condom in his wallet. So they are back at their cabin later, and she has thought about some things, and she realizes she's ready to do this. And so she asks him, does he have the condom? And she wants to throw the wrapper away. And he's like, is this about, and then she goes, this is about how you carried my bag off the bus yesterday. And this is about how whenever we go to the movies, you always make sure to bring back extra napkins so I don't have to wipe all the popcorn grease off on my jeans. This is about how when we go to miniature golf, you always make sure to when we go to miniature golf, you always go first to make sure I know how to take the right path. You taught me to drive. Oh my God, no. Oh my God, now the pressure is getting me.
I like this is pressure. There's no pressure here. It's okay. You don't have to do the whole thing.
You taught me to drive. Oh my God. And then what comes after that? I was like,
Then I will tell you, I have absolutely no idea what comes after that.
It's like, I think is it the part where it's like, you kissed me first, sweetheart, and the second time you counted to 10 before doing it again, just in case I wanted to stop you. You bought me a wall. And then Pacey interrupts and goes, I didn't so much as buy it as you understood without a word. Sailed around the world for 3 months, and you understood without a word why I wasn't ready. Do you have to ask me now why I am? So, Pace, I'm going to count to 10, and then I'm going to start kissing you. And if you don't want me to, then you're just going to have to stop me. And then she counts to 10, and then that's it. Great, got there. That's not the most eloquent that I would have liked to have done it.
I mean, listen, I could never have done that. So
I would have refreshed had I known that was
I didn't know it was going to happen either. That's the beauty of when I say we're doing live to tape, because I don't want to learn to edit. I loved it. I think it was great. But I think also like that speech is also, it wasn't something I was going to talk to you about because it comes up so much later in the show. But I think it also kind of does speak a lot to what I would hope if you grew up watching this saying, I want to be Joey. I think Pacey's the perfect boyfriend. Like the things that you take away, right? Like how good he was to her, how patient he was, how he let her take the lead and say, like, when you are ready for physical things and non-physical things. Like that was one thing I thought that they always did very well with that particular relationship, but on this show in general. I don't know if that was something that you were thinking about when you were like 9 or 10 years old, but like I do wonder if it's like seeps in and becomes like a subconscious. Now you expect all guys to act this way.
No, for sure. Also, like that was season 4, so by that time I was
That's true. I think
12-ish.
yeah,
So
I was
like
thinking season
boy
3.
sex wasn't a thing for me, but like obviously like boys and relationship and like
Yeah.
getting into those first relationships. And I think my therapist would agree that Pacey Witter set a bar that was so high that the standards
Well,
were too high for any, like especially for a middle school
I
boy.
was just going to say, like, when you're a kid and that is your example, and he is a kid who is acting like what an adult should do, I think like
Yeah.
that is also, yes, every boy should watch that and learn that is how you should be and be respectful. But I don't think anybody was. And I certainly
No.
don't think when they grow up to become men that they're going back and watching Dawson's Creek and being like, I should learn from this kid.
Yeah. I will say that in middle school, like at this time, the boy that I had like this like obsessive crush over was like a twin of Joshua Jackson and Mighty Ducks 3. Like they looked that
Physically. Okay.
yes, physically he looked just like
Hmm.
Joshua Jackson from so like that played into it like a
Yeah, I was gonna
whole
say, I think we know why you liked him. That's
yeah.
okay. I don't really need
I
to know
remember
anything else about him.
my
That's
brother came to
please.
pick me up from school and saw him. I was like, he looks like Charlie Conway from Mighty Ducks. And I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's not a coincidence. That's on purpose. So yeah, no, I definitely think that Pacey has impacted, like there's a standard of men of like Pacey Witter or go home. Like
Yeah. Yeah. I get that. Do you feel
yeah.
like when you like, well, let me ask this. How often do you revisit the show now?
Um I go through phases. Like there'll be like a couple years where I don't, but it's like if I'm having a real shit day and one of those like I don't want to talk to anybody, I will put on that season 3 arc from Aunt Gwen's house to the finale, skipping the regatta episode. I hate the regatta episode
That's fair.
so much.
That's fair. Although I will say, and this might get me some hate, I didn't like The Longest Day that much. And I think the reason I didn't like it is because that technique of like we're going to see the same thing over and over again from different points of view felt very stylized for the time. And I don't think it held up to my attention span of today. I will say that. And I think that
I
might, again,
will
it's a me problem. It's not, I enjoyed that they played around and tried something, but I didn't love it.
I will say like I see your point now. It's less enjoyable for me, but like it was so profound to me at the time that it happened that like it
Mm,
has that warmth for the episode has stayed there.
yes.
I used to say it was my absolute favorite episode, but no, now the Aunt Gwen episode is my
Okay.
absolute favorite episode.
But that, and
Um
honestly, this is the kind of stuff I want to hear. Like, there's a reason it stayed with you. It's because it was so important to you when you were younger. If I had had this experience when I was younger watching it, I think I would like that episode more as well. Part of what I want to do here is like, oh, everybody should be checking out these things because they're such important pieces of pop culture. They've had people so inspired that they then, built careers and have gone on to watch this stuff for their whole lives. But at the same time, like, I do wonder if you're just tuning in today for the very first time, what your reactions are to certain things. So hopefully we'll start some discussions
yeah,
and hopefully they will
I
be
always
friendly.
I'm always so curious of when people like people that didn't watch Dawson's Creek when they were younger because well now we're at a point where like they were born when it
Yeah,
ended.
you couldn't have watched it. You
Now they
didn't
watch
exist.
it and it's like, what is happening? Like, so much of the show doesn't make sense
Yeah.
because you're outside of that bubble.
Yeah,
Um,
that's true. I mean, but I think
but
like the big arcs that everybody is connected to, love, death, like all like Jack's coming out, like all of these things
yeah,
are really profound if you understood the time that you were watching it in live, but I think still just as poignant if you're watching it now. Some of the stuff is dated, the music, the hair, the clothes, but what is
yeah,
happening and the emotion between the characters, I do think that holds up. I think that's why I was so stuck on like the way Dawson and Pacey would sometimes be yelling, because to me, I got to know them better as adult actors and I got to
yeah,
see them like really perform. And then when I watched this, I was like, oh, I don't think you're doing your best work, but it's because you're a kid and because it's like you don't, it's
yeah,
you hadn't maybe tapped into that emotion in reality yet. So some of the nuance wasn't there. But if I was watching it when I was 14, I don't think I would have noticed that. I would have just been mad that you're yelling at Joey because
yeah.
you
Because
shouldn't
when
be
you're
yelling at
also
Joey.
when you're that age, every emotion feels like it's the biggest emotion
Yeah.
ever, and they're clearly playing that because like they were like uh Katie Holmes was 18 in season 1 of Dawson's Creek, and I think she was one of the youngest. Like
Yeah.
she and Michelle Williams were the youngest on the cast. Um, but I will say, going back to Jack and that storyline, part of the reason why that resonates so much, and that is like that scene in the season 3 finale when he is talking to his dad about like,
Mm-hmm.
you can't understand what this is like. The part of that is so heartbreaking, but that is Greg Berlanti, who
Yeah.
was showrunner and wrote that episode. That was his coming out story. Like, he went and kissed this guy in front of a bunch of people and got rejected, and that's real. And like that resonates because it is comes from such a personal place. And now
Mm-hmm.
Greg Berlanti is the most prolific producer of television. It's like because he knows how to write those stories.
Right.
Um,
Right.
every time I'm like in a room with Greg Berlanti, like I know he's done so much and accomplished so much, but I'm always like, oh, it's the man who wrote the season 3 finale of Dawson's Creek.
First of all, I don't think you're alone in that, and I don't think that's a bad thing at all. Like there are so many worse things that somebody could be known for. Like if you said that to him, I think he'd be thrilled. You know what I mean? Like I don't,
Yeah,
and I think a lot of it is because it is so personal. Like, you can have a prolific career, you can make a million shows, be a producer on all those DC shows and everything, but they didn't all have that connection to you. You know, they're not all that special. So I would imagine, especially because that was so much earlier in his career, that, go tell him you love it. He will still enjoy hearing it.
I will. In the very early stages of my career, before I even made it to TV journalism, I was a social media assistant for the Chopra family.
Oh,
But
that's amazing.
yeah,
Also, I love that the early stages of your career, early stages of my career, social media did not exist yet. So fantastic.
um but their YouTube channel was produced by this company called Generate Media,
Mm.
and one of the CEOs of Generate had been one of the co-CEOs of WB when
Oh,
Dawson's Creek was
wow.
on. And I just remember we had a Christmas party and I had a couple drinks and he was like at the pool table. I was like, I I just have to tell you that like every time I walk by your office and see the posters of Dawson's Creek, I just like that show like shaped me as a human being. And he's like, you can come by, like I'll tell you all the stories. And
Oh,
I never got up the nerve to like go talk to him in his office, but I did tell him at that Christmas party. I was like, no, you don't understand, your work shaped me as a human.
which, first of all, I almost, in that instance, almost do feel like maybe it's better that you didn't go hear stories. Because, like, would he tell you only the good stories, or would he tell you the things you don't want to hear because it shaped you
Yeah,
in a good way and you don't want your memories ruined?
yeah, I don't want to hear how everyone hated each other behind the scenes or any of that stuff. I know a decent amount about it, but I was like, I don't want it
Right. You don't want, sometimes
rubbed
it's
in.
like, keep your bubble. It's
Yeah,
safer in your bubble.
yeah,
All right. So I want to talk also about what is influencing you now. Like, obviously, you go back and you watch Dawson's. I just asked that question, but there's so much out now, and I'm sure a lot of it is influencing you simply because you're writing about it.
yeah.
Outside of that, although I feel like you probably write about what you're about to say too anyway,
Yeah.
is there something that you feel like you want to shine a light on? Maybe it's underrepresented, maybe it's just something that is very personal to you. Where are you at today?
Yeah. I will say when you hinted that this would be a question. It was really hard to come up with something. But the thing that
Everyone's
came to
been
mind,
saying that.
yeah, it's
I
like,
didn't think that it would be so hard.
what is influencing you as like a 35-year-old? But the thing that came to mind that I really thought about was So Help Me Todd, which is an underrated gem on CBS. And I haven't written about it. Part of me is hesitant to write about it because it is like,
You did interviews or something. I remember reading it.
I think I did one interview in season. No, I did. Okay, I did 2 interviews in season 1.
I
That's right.
remember reading something. So okay. Oh, but you didn't write about it like extensively on a personal
Right. And I haven't really been seeking out writing about it now. I mean, I will if anybody wants me to, because I will accept any paycheck. But no, it is my like Friday night routine to like watch So Help Me Todd in Fire Country. But like So Help Me Todd is like my joyous little, like, that's my show that I was like, oh, I'm gonna have a good time with Skylar Astin and Marcia Gay Harden this week.
Okay, so it's like a wind down routine, like a
little bit, yeah.
Okay, all right. Is there something about him, her character, like what drew you in?
So the whole thing is that Todd is a disgraced private detective.
Well,
and
in season 1,
in season 1,
in season 2, he gets his license back.
He does get his license back, and that's kind of like where I'm at right now. Is like, as I'm contemplating this next chapter of my life, it feels kind of like starting over. So like Todd is, I don't know, he's a role model in that way.
Yeah, I get it.
And the idea that like, yeah, he's figuring out how to do this thing on his own terms is kind of I relate to that a lot right now. From a pure enjoyment perspective, I will say that we have not given Marcia Gay Harden enough comedic roles because she's so, like, she is
everybody
the MVP.
Forgets trophy wife. I'm
It's
over
true.
here ringing the bell by myself.
But it's just like Marcia Gay Harden is so unexpectedly funny in the show, and I am so thrilled with her. There's an episode where she has to go long to catch a football because they're trying to like take down a drone with it. It's ridiculous. They're at a farm at night, and it's the whole Marcia Gay Harden running in her heels to go long for this football to destroy a drone is like, that's a TV, and people need to watch it just to have joy in their lives.
I like what you're talking about in terms of it being, first of all, comedic. I mean, it is a 1 hour technically drama, but like there is a lot of comedy in it. But I like that this idea of this guy starting over, and to an effect, her starting over, because I mean, in the pilot, her husband leaves her. That's a big storyline. Is like, is her son going to be able to figure out what happened to him, and also what happened to him, and like, is he sick? Is he dying? What's going on? I don't want to say a lot because if people haven't seen it, I want them to go watch it. I don't want to spoil it. But at the same time, I like the idea that this is joyful, that we're not just being like, oh, they have to start over and everything is so hard and like how, and you know, that to me, there's so much turmoil in life, especially coming out of the pandemic, which the show obviously came after the pandemic, of people having these experiences of major changes in their lives. And I'm one who usually likes watching like very dark dramas, but within reason. If it's something that is too close to what we're experiencing in life, job changes, relationship changes, or whatever, I need the comedy in there so that I feel better about myself, honestly.
Yeah. I was like, even the sister now this season, like she has I guess a third life crisis throughout the first season. The second season is about like she's divorced her husband, like is trying to, like, she's still a doctor, but like, who is she as a human? I think like all 3 of those characters are trying to figure stuff out, so it's been interesting to watch them go on that journey together.
I mean, obviously we don't know where the season goes because we're taping this very early into season 2, but do you feel like a show like that, because you're being you feel like you're being inspired maybe by Todd's journey, do you feel like you need to see him succeed to feel like you're gonna succeed? How attached are you? But also beyond attachment, like, do you want to separate sometimes? Do you feel like I see myself in the show, but that because of that, I don't want to get too attached?
No, I don't think I associate myself with him that closely because personality wise, we're very different.
Okay.
And just no, like, because like Todd is very like shoot from the hip, kind of like impulsive, and I am the exact opposite, where it's like we're going to overthink every possible situation here. So no, it's like whether he fails or not is not, I don't personally tie myself to. I think if like he gave up being a PI, that would be a thing. But yeah, I don't personally tie myself to his success. Because also I also am like, I'm old enough now. I think maybe if I was younger, it would be different. But like now that I'm old, I was like, well, yeah, if he succeeds, what is season 3?
Well, I mean, I guess it also depends on what your definition of success is, because if he's succeeding, but the other characters aren't, then you're flipping your dynamics and you're adding a new complicated relationship situation. Like the show is still, I think, would still be interesting, but in different ways. Like if he's suddenly the successful one, that
and
would
his mom
be,
has to come work for him because,
well, I don't even know if I would go that far, but just her having to wrap, like, because even right now she is struggling with the partner, or the firm is kind of underwater in terms of money, and they have to, I hate to laugh because that was a bad reaction, but like they're going through layoffs. It has nothing to do with whether that person is qualified or like that job is needed. They just have to cut people. And I was like, ooh, that hits so close to home. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can watch this if that's what's going to be every week. One firing every week. It's not.
Yeah.
You don't have to fear that that's what they're doing. But I mean, I think even that, just like having her be humbled a little bit and have him hopefully
I
see
think
some
it's
success.
as triggering as it is to watch people get laid off. I think also it is nice to have her sitting there and like thinking about the person and their role in the company, and like, which I think both you and I know that in both of our situations, that's not what happened for us.
Exactly. I was like, it was nice to watch on TV, but it was also one of those like, oh, this is fake.
Yeah, this is not what would have happened. Like what would have happened is they would have gone through and first of all, people wouldn't have had one-on-one meetings.
No, I know.
Private
oh my
meetings
God.
to like get told what's happening. You would have been put on a group Zoom.
I gasped. Can I tell you? So what was the episode, just for everybody listening? I believe it was episode 3 of season 2, where she has to fire her, Marcia Gay Harden's character has to fire her first employee, and she brings her into her office, and I audibly gasped and was like, oh my God, does she not know how things are done? Because that is part of the shtick of, she is a little bit older. She struggles with technology. She doesn't always know everything. She doesn't always call everything the appropriate name. So I was like, does she not understand how people are getting laid off these days? It was so human and unexpected.
Yeah, which is like, they did that to like hammer home how conflicted she is about having to do it.
But
and
it was
all
nice.
of that, we're just like, yeah. Which is like, how sad is it that like Succession is doing the most accurate form of layoff by having them on a group Zoom and being like, your job's over, bye.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know. It's rough out there, but listen, it's rough out there, but at least we have these things that are making things a little bit better, right? Theoretically, maybe.
That is the point of your podcast. Is like, thank God for pop culture and TV. Let's not get stuck in the sadness of it all. I still, regardless of how many people that Marcia Gay Harden has to lay off every week, I will watch her run down the streets of Portland.
I was just going to say, use the air quotes on that, because I'm not sure where they
Vancouver,
film, but it's not Portland. Yeah,
it is Vancouver.
Okay.
In her high heels to try and, catch the client, take out a drone, whatever it is she's doing this particular week.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you, Megan, for coming on today so much. Before everybody disperses, I do want to say, if this episode inspired you to watch any of these shows, here's where you can find them. And I do need to say, here's where you can find them as of the taping of this episode. We all know things get removed from streamers at any time. And please note that Made Possible by Pop Culture is not sponsored by or getting any perks from these services. I'm just sharing this so that you can also love these shows as much as Megan and I do. Dawson's Creek is streaming on Hulu, and So Help Me Todd airs new episodes Thursdays at 9 p.m. on CBS and streams on Paramount+. All right, that was my spiel, and my legal language hopefully checks out. Anyway, thank you, Megan, for coming on.
Of course, thanks for having me.
Yes, and thank you all for listening/watching. Like, comment, subscribe, follow on social media. We'll be around for many more weeks.